read this, I found it a little confusing, as often I do when reading the parables, because there is so much depth to them. And we can read them at so many different levels, and we can get the message from them that the Lord is wanting us to get. And it may vary for everyone in this room. What this lesson is called is the persistent widow. And the writer of Luke says that this is a parable that Jesus said to show the disciples that they should always pray and not give up. Their persistence. And we understand that value of persistent prayer. The persistence is not to change God's mind, but to keep that loved one, that need, that concern in front of us and with us. Prayer lifts others up, and it opens up to a divine communication with God. Again, I'm reminded of Margaret, as she faced hospitalizations and many issues. And she mentioned, as I was visiting one time, that she could feel it when people were praying for her while lying there in the hospital bed. Persistent prayer is very important, and it can be offered in a variety of ways. Sometimes we think we need to have it all thought out, what is the best outcome for this person. But that's not up to us. So we can pray just remembering the person, keeping the person with us, holding them in light as they go through difficulties. It doesn't have to be a thought-out verbal request to God, for it's hard to know what is best for ourselves or for anyone else. It's holding them in our hearts consistently and persistently. But now I want to take a deeper look at this parable, because we have this unjust judge. Don't you wonder how he got to be judge if he's unjust? He neither feared God nor cared anything about people, or apparently widows. And in the culture of Jesus' time, and hopefully in our culture at this time, widows and orphans and foreigners were all to be cared for because they were the vulnerable, the lowest people, and they were easily forgotten and ignored. And then we have this widow that just keeps coming up to this unjust judge, asking for justice. We don't know much about her. We don't know what happened. We don't know what she's wanting. But she persisted. We know that. And she is being lifted up as a faithful example in persistent prayer, but also in perseverance against injustice and the call to fight injustice. So as I was looking at this, I wondered, is there a difference between the word persistence and perseverance? So naturally, I turned to the internet, and I found a good explanation that made sense to me on the difference between persistence and perseverance. And interestingly, last night I was talking to my daughter in Indiana, and she was talking about how persistent their new baby is. And she wasn't using it in that positive manner. So we talked about the difference between persistence and perseverance. What I found on the internet. The words persistence and perseverance have very similar meanings when it comes to success. Persistence is the choice to continue something despite difficulty and opposition and struggle to achieve that goal. The single-mindedness of a person brings out the dedication that he or she wants and needs in order to achieve that objective. But perseverance, and this is the difference, it's the continuation of commitment through action in spite of the lack of success. It's also the ability to overcome the repetitiveness of problems from difficult situations. Perseverance is more important than just plain persistence, because it's about having stamina and endurance during the time of struggle. While persistence is a choice, perseverance means surviving the toughest conditions. It's not about being a pest or bothering someone or crying as a baby does until they get what they want. It's learning from this and coming out better on the other side. It's not just getting our way or what we want. It's about continuing to journey through the difficult times and being changed through the process by growing, learning, and evolving. Perseverance is how we keep on keeping on, even when we can't see what's ahead of us. And sometimes I think it's like the Hopi elder. It's about letting go of the shore and trusting. You can persist and keep a hold of the shore, or what we are so sure is right. But as the elder says, holding onto the shore can cause you to be torn apart and suffer even more. Perseverance entails letting go. Maybe it's our religious ideas, our political underpinnings, letting go and listening to what others think and what others feel makes a difference. Persevering is seeking justice with an open mind. Persistence relates to the single-mindedness and may indicate the mind is closed. I'm reminded of Peter walking on the water. He was walking out to the boat where the disciples, or Jesus was walking out to the boat where the disciples had been fishing, and there was a storm coming up. And when Peter saw that, he's that zealous one, that excited one, and he says, "Oh, I want to do that. I want to walk on the water, Jesus." And Jesus says, "Well, come on." Yeah. So he steps out of the boat, and he does pretty good for a while, and then the wind starts coming up, and he starts to sink. And you remember what Jesus did? I love this image. He put his hand out to Peter and said, "You can do this. You just need to have faith. You have to believe that it's more than just you in this. We are in this together." Keeping our hand in the hand of the one who walks on the water gets us through perseverance. So now let's look at the reading from Revelation. Written to the church of Ephesus, it says, "I know your deeds, your hard work, and your perseverance. I know that you cannot tolerate wicked men, that you have tested those who claim to be apostles but are not, and have found them false. You have persevered and have endured hardships for my name and have not grown weary." And then comes the but. Jesus goes on, "Yet I hold this against you. You have forsaken your first love." So what do we think would be the first love? What is love? Exactly. The first, the one, the most, what Jesus calls the number one commandment. Two commandments: to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul, and to love each other as yourself. So they were so tied up in justice and getting things right that they had lost the vision of the love. And I think in this difficult time that we are in, it's easy to find ourselves in that type of thinking. Surrounding by others that think like us and listening to the news that we want to hear and follow and we agree with. Angered by falsity and deceit that we can see can lead to anger against those that do not think like us. So it's our responsibility to notice injustice. That's very important as Christians, as people that care and love for one another. We need to resist and we need to speak out about corrupt institutions and people over and over again. And, again from the Hopi elders, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment we do, our spiritual growth and journey come to a halt. Last Tuesday, I heard a speech by President Obama, and whether you're a fan or not, he is in a great place to sit back and reflect about what's going on, in my opinion. And he said, he cautioned, the idea of purity and that you'll never compromise, you're always politically woke and all that stuff, you should get over that quickly. The world is messy. There are ambiguities. People who do really good things have flaws. People you are fighting may love their kids. And they share certain things with all of us. And I think that one danger I see amongst young people, and this is accelerated by social media, and I don't think this is just a problem with young people, because I find myself there too, is to be judgmental about other people, putting them down and putting ourselves up. He went on, like if I tweet or hashtag about how you didn't do something right or use the wrong verb, I can sit back and feel good about myself. Man, you see how woke I was? I called you out. You know, that's not activism. That's not bringing about change, the president said. It is making it all about us and puffing ourselves up by putting another down. And that's not loving the neighbor as ourselves. That's loving ourselves over the neighbor. I also included this reading from Swedenborg. And I really like what he has to say. It's also in your bulletin. He said, the zeal of a good love harbors in its inner aspects friendship and love. But the zeal of an evil love harbors in its inner aspects hatred and vengeance. We said that zeal appears in outward respects like anger and rage, both in those who are prompted by good love and in those who are prompted by an evil love. So it can look the same. We can come across the same with this anger and hatred and vengeance. But because the internal elements are different, so also is their expression of anger and rage different. And the differences are as follows. The zeal of a good love is like a heavenly flame which never leaps out to attack another, but only defends itself, defending against an evil assailant in much the same way as when such one rushes at a fire and is burned. Whereas the zeal of an evil love is like a hellish flame, which spontaneously leaps out and rushes upon another and tries to devour them. And second, the zeal of a good love immediately dies down and softens when the other desists from the attack, whereas the zeal of an evil love persists and is not extinguished. The reason for this is that the internal element in the one who is prompted by a love of good is in itself gentle, mild, friendly, and kind. Consequently, even when, to protect itself, the external element hardens, stiffens, and bristles, and so acts harshly, still it is tempered by the goodness which moves in its internal element. But not so in evil people. In them, the internal element is hostile, savage, hard, seizing with hatred and vengeance, and it feeds on the delights of those emotions. And if it is appeased, still those emotions lie concealed within, like fires smoldering in the wood beneath the ash. And if these fires do not break out in the world, nevertheless, they do after death. You may have to read this one or two times to get all that's in there, but I really appreciated what it said. And I think we've seen this in people, in leaders. I've seen it in myself. And it isn't pretty. Our country seems to be following vengeance and actual hatred for those that think differently. We make fun of those we don't agree with and feel a sort of inner justification when others do. And social media is really bad at this, leading us down this path. So I think our responsibility is to notice this in the media and in ourselves and turn it up, look within. What do I need to do to be loving the neighbor? Even when we are speaking up for the children, the immigrants, the vulnerable, and with zeal we're speaking up. But to make this world work again, we have to look at what is within our zeal. We have to let go of the lone wolf, like the Hopi elder said, and gather together and find common ground in a sacred manner. And we can do this. So I move now to our last scripture from the Old Testament, from Exodus. And at this time, the children of Israel they've just left bondage in Egypt. So they've been traveling. The Lord opened the Red Sea so they could get through. The Lord's been feeding them quail and manna and taking care of all of their needs. And still they complain to their leader Moses. They're thirsty. So God tells Moses to strike a rock. And when he does, fresh water comes out for the people to drink. New truth. We would think that after the people had been cared for this way by the Lord, all of the miraculous gifts and healing and leading from the Lord, they would be satisfied. But only thing they can see are those obstacles right ahead of them, as so often happens in our own lives. How quickly we forget what all God has done for us. And this is when we are attacked by the Amalekites. Just like the battles in the Old Testament and the trials that the Israelites had to overcome on their journey to the Promised Land. This is us. It relates to our spiritual journey throughout life. From Exodus 12 and on, in the spiritual sense, this is a period of reformation in us. The period where we try to recognize our faults, lift them up to the Lord, and try to make change in our lives. So these words from the 17th chapter of Exodus, it's how to persevere when life is hard and things are not going like we would want. The Amalekites represent times when we are tired and weak and feel like giving up because things happening around us feel overwhelming and we don't know where to start. Amalek means valley dweller, low times, down in the depths, living in the low, dark parts of our lives. The Amalekites in Scripture sneak up behind the Israelites and attack their weakest part, attack them from behind. And in life, they attack us when we're tired and our perseverance is dwindling, and we cannot overcome them on our own. So God told the leader Moses to go up on a hill and to take Aaron and Hur with him while Joshua, which is truth fighting, was out working and trying to overcome the Amalekites. And when he got up there, Moses lifted up his hands to heaven, knowing that everyone needed God's help to get through this. And as long as he kept his hands in the air, the Israelites kept winning. But his arms got tired. And you can imagine, you could just feel the tiredness that would come, and they would lower. And when he put his arms down to rest, then the Amalekites started winning again. And so I love this picture because his brother Aaron and friend Hur, they come and move this big stone so he can sit down. So a solid rock, he could rest in the Lord. And each one held a hand up so that he could continue to reach out to the Lord and continue to offer that support for the people that were fighting. And as we look at this, I'm reminded of how when we are in these difficult times, how important it is to lift these concerns to the Lord and have friends with us that help us to keep our hands elevated. And the explanation that is given from Swedenborg with Moses and Aaron and Hur, they all have an inner sense. They all have this way to help us understand. So Moses is the truth within the Word of God, within other things that we turn to and things we remember in time of need. Maybe, I believe it's also in what the Hopi Indians can give us and other different things within our life that the Lord opens to us. So Moses is this truth, and Aaron is the understanding, trying to understand at a deeper level, and then Hur is putting it to use in our lives and doing good for other people. So we have this image of three that we can carry with us when things get difficult and we feel like we're being attacked or things are not going the way we would hope for them to go, knowing that the Lord is always with us, that we can put our hand in the hand of the one that walks on the water and ask for help. Amen.